So we had a 2 by 2 design and a 2 by 3 design. Now we have a 2 by 2 by 2 design. Um, so I filled in all of these cell names for all 8 boxes. And we have 2 different types of music, 2 different temperatures. We also have 2 different types of availability of water, which basically means that these 8 people over here did not have any water during the experiment, and these 8 people over here were allowed to drink water during the experiment. I just filled in these numbers. And it's asking what types of results were found. The first 3 right here, we're asking about the main effects of the 3 independent variables. The main effect of type music, the main effect of temperature, and the main effect of availability of water. To find out if there were any main effects, we have to do some, you have to calculate some averages, and I'll show you how we did that work. This is what we did for the main effects. So I took the 8 for the main effect of type of music, which is classical versus silence. I took the 8 numbers, the 8 recall scores for all of the people who listen to classical music, and put them in this column right here. And those recall scores were 8, 10, 5, 7, 8, 10, 5, 7. So these 2 people here, these 2 people here, these 2 people here, and these 2 people right here. Those 8 recall scores are all here. For silence, I took the 8 recall scores from people who listened to silence, which were 5, 7, 4, 6 over here, and 5, 7, 2, 4. Those were the 8 numbers. Then what I did was I calculated the average recall score of all 8 people who listened to classical music. I took these 8 numbers and added them and divided by 8, and I got this average. I took the 8 recall scores for all people who listened to silence. I added them and divided by 8, and I got the average for the silence condition. And what I do now is I look at these 2 averages. If they come out to the same number, there's no main effect of type of music. If they come out to different numbers, there is a main effect of type of music. So since they came out to different numbers, there was a main effect of type of music in this data set. Over here, I looked at the main effect of temperature. What I did was I took the 8 recall scores for all people who listened to for all people who were in the 60-degree room. And how did I get those? Well, this is 60 degrees. Those 8 recall scores were 8, 10, 5, 7, 8, 10, 5, 7. All of the 8 recall scores in this top row right here were in the 60-degree condition. So, like I said, 8, 10, 5, 7, 8, 10, 5, 7. I put those right here. I took the 8 recall scores for people who were in the 80-degree room right here. Those recall scores were 5, 7, 4, 6, 5, 7, 2, 4. Basically everything from this bottom row down here. I got the average of this column and the average of this column, and they're not the same number. So there was a main effect of temperature. To look at the main effect of availability of water, I took the 8 recall scores for people who did not have any water, which were all of the recall scores over here. 8, 10, 5, 7, 5, 7, 4, 6. Everything in this grid right here, I put in this column. This says water is available. For this column, I just took the 8 recall scores from people who did have water during the experiment, which were all of the numbers in this grid over here. 8, 10, 5, 7, 5, 7, 2, 4. Those went into the available column. I took the average of these 8 people and the average of these 8 people, And the two averages are not the same, so there was a main effect of availability of water. So since we found a difference all three times, we had three main effects. We had a main effect here, a main effect here, and a main effect here. So we had a main effect of all three independent variables. Now what I asked for over here was the interactions between pairs of independent variables, which interactions between two independent variables. And I'll show you what I mean. We wanted to look for an interaction between type of music and temperature, an interaction between type of music and availability of water, and an interaction between temperature and availability of water. So an interaction between IV1 and IV2, an interaction between IV1 and IV3, and an interaction between IV2 and IV3. I'll show you how we can find out which of these were in our data set. Find out whether there was an interaction between type of music and temperature. We have to combine everything back down into a 2x2 design, in which the columns are the types of music and the rows are the temperatures, like they are here. And the third independent variable of availability of water is just being ignored. So what we have here is, right here is the average of all four numbers. When you add 8 plus 10 plus 8 plus 10 and divide the total by 4, you get 9. When you add 5 plus 7 plus 5 plus 7 and divide the total by 4, you get 6. The same thing down here. This number is the average of all four numbers, and this number right here is the average of all four numbers. So each cell mean is an average of four numbers, not just two numbers. And when we plot in a line graph right here, in the top row it goes from 6 to 9. This is 6 to 9. This is 60 degrees. In the bottom row it goes from 4 to 6, which is right here. This is 80 degrees. And the two lines are not parallel because this goes up by 3, this goes up by 2. So this is steeper than this. So there is an interaction between music, type of music, and temperature. Now we want to look at whether there's an interaction between type of music and availability of water. We just get the cell means over again. This time the columns are the types of music, and the rows are availability of water. And temperature is ignored. So when we plot these four cell means, what we have is, in the top row, it goes from 4.5 up to 7.5, this line right here. In the bottom row, it goes from 5.5 up to 7.5, which is this line right here. And this line goes up by 2, from 5.5 to 7.5. This line goes up by 3, from 4.5 to 7.5. So the two lines are not parallel, and there is an interaction. So we have an interaction between type music and temperature. You have an interaction between type of music and availability of water. Now we have to look at whether there's an interaction between temperature and availability of water. And when we plot these four cell means, we do have an interaction right here. I have the types of music down here. I'm sorry. We're ignoring type of music in this sheet right here because we're looking at music and water, and we're ignoring music in this case. So we're plotting these four cell means. Right here, when water is available, we go from 4.5 to 7.5, which is this line right here. When water is not available, we go from 5.5 to 7.5, which is this line right here. And one line one line is steeper than the other line because this is a 2-point difference, this is a 3-point difference. So there is an interaction between temperature and availability of water. So we found all three of those interactions. So we found all three main effects. We found all three interactions. So these are all check marked. The last thing we have to check for is a three-way interaction. To be able to find out if there's a three-way interaction, you have to break things back down into a 2x2x2 design, which means we go back to this type of diagram right here where we have 8 boxes. Then what we do is we make a graph for these 4 boxes over here for when water is not available. And we make a same type of line graph for these 4 boxes when water is available. If this graph is not the same as this graph over here, then we have a three-way interaction. So let's take a look. Over here we have an interaction because the lines are not parallel. And over here we don't have an interaction because the lines are parallel. So we have an interaction in one graph but no interaction in the other graph. That's a three-way interaction. So we do have a three-way interaction. If they had both been parallel, that would have been no three-way interaction. And if they had both looked like this over here, then that would have also been no three-way interaction. The fact that they're different from each other is what gives us a three-way interaction. So we have a three-way interaction. So we're going to check this box right here. So we checked all of these. We found all of them. And then now it says, how would you describe the three-way interaction? We have to find out which of these is correct. Well, what this three-way interaction is showing is that when water is not available and it's 80 degrees in the room, people are getting dehydrated. And when they get dehydrated, classical music doesn't help their memory as much, because we can see that when water is not available and it's 80 degrees in the room, classical music only brings up recall by 1 point. We can see that right here. It only goes up from 5 up to 6. And we can see that in all of the other situations, classical music raises recall by 3 points. When it's 60 degrees and there's no water, recall goes up by 3 points. When it's 60 degrees and there is water, recall goes up by 3 points right here. And when it's 80 degrees and water is available, recall goes up by 3 points. So in all three of these other situations, people aren't getting dehydrated, because if it's 60 degrees, it's pretty cool in the room, so you won't get dehydrated, regardless of whether you have water or don't have water. And when it's 80 degrees and you do have water, you won't be dehydrated because you're drinking water. But in this one situation over here where water is not available and it's 80 degrees, you'll get dehydrated and classical music won't help you as much, which is why this line right here isn't as steep. It's only a 1 point difference. So let's find out which of the answer choices matches up with what I just said. So if water is not available, classical music has less of an effect when the temperature is hot, because in that situation, people are getting dehydrated, and because of the dehydration, classical music isn't helping their memory as much as it would otherwise.